Brighten up your morning. Pacific Mornings with Aggie and Alpha.
Yes, it is another edition of Aggie and Alpha on Pacific Mornings. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's 8:09, and we have the pleasure of welcoming the Right Honourable Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern on the show this morning so that we can talanoa around everything to do with the latest outbreak with COVID-19. So good morning to the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, I think I'm a little bit nervous.
Nervous,
I
aren't you?
am.
Good
I'm just
morning, Prime Minister.
Don't be. Oh, come on more regularly, and then you'll stop being nervous.
Prime Minister, I'm going to ask you a question while Aggie is catching her breath, and this is coming from our Niuean aunties. They want to know. There you go. The aunties want to know: are you looking after yourself? Because we're seeing you in every clock of the hour. If there's 24 hours on a clock, we're seeing you 1 hour, 2 hours, and they want to know: have you been having some takihi, and have you been looking after yourself?
I love my Niuean aunties. I am, thank you, I am, and I really appreciate that, but my job's to look after everyone else. I can assure the aunties my mum does a good job of looking after me.
Thank you for that, Prime Minister. Look, a lot of my family have already asked the likelihood. Now, we've only just had experienced 48 hours already now of the lockdown, but do you think there might be an extension? Are we even looking at something going further than the 7 days, or will it be 7 days?
Please say no.
Good question. And look, the reason we went 7 days, well, twofold. One, we really wanted to know how this most recent case came to be. We've now, in the last 24 hours, been able to confirm that. We found the link, and that's really important because once we know how it happened, we can see whether or not there might be other chains that came off it. So narrowing that down is great and really helpful. But the second reason we went for 7 days is the person who most recently became ill with COVID was out and about whilst possibly infectious for about a week in really highly populated areas like MIT, for instance. So we wanted a week so that we could make sure that we were finding and isolating all the possible at-risk people. So we haven't made a decision about needing to go further than that, but you'll see from each day when we give updates how things are tracking.
Prime Minister, I want to ask you this, right? When was it, case M? That's just what would be referred to, case M or case O. Not quite sure which one it was.
Our most recent ones. Yep.
Now, when that came out, the information in terms of areas of interest, there was a bit of a fumble there in terms of the exact area. We also had the messaging that went out. I mean, communities didn't receive it instantly, and that sort of impacted decision making. People turn up at church on Sunday. Is there a room for improvement in terms of getting that message from you to your team into our public? Because we all received it, and I'm sure everyone was up watching the fight or watching something because it was way before midnight. But yet communities were still getting up, going to churches. And, is there, who can we sort of point the gauntlet and send to detention right there?
Well, we do everything we can. We usually, in the past, when we've moved alert levels, we've often given, a day of warning or even 2 days of warning. This time we tried to move very, very quickly. So that meant, as you've said, an announcement at 9 o'clock at night, live crosses from TV, alerts going out to all smartphones. So your phone will have been amongst many that blurred, blasted a message to everyone. Then we try and use our networks. We use social media networks. We put on advertising into radio and television straight away. We use our Ministry for Pacific Peoples to get messages out to community leaders. So there was a short space of time, but we blasted it out as much as we could. Then we move into making sure that we're getting translated messages, because one of the challenges is, of course, we've got to make sure that we are giving the messages in everyone's language so that it is, accessible. And so there will sometimes be people who don't hear it straight away, but we try and fix that very, very quickly.
Prime Minister, you see, lockdown level 1, our first lockdown, we understood the intricacies that needed to be traversed right there. We went through lockdown number 2. By number 3, we kind of started to get the pattern. When the Prime Minister is there, everyone watches. Smartphone or no smartphone, you have smart kids.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
what I'm getting towards is that there seems to be a bubble of from the ministry into these Pacific communities immediately. Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you look at the way the record of COVID and how it's impacted Aotearoa, South Auckland, I mean, Pacific people in general, now Maori, we are the ones that somehow COVID likes to hang around longer than everywhere else.
It's riskier, absolutely, because we've identified that where we have health inequalities, where there might be things like diabetes or respiratory illness, it is much more dangerous. We know that. And that is why we in Aotearoa have a strategy of elimination to protect our people. And so, yes, we've been through this a few times now. Our networks and our connections, I've seen, Zoom-based whānau that have been very large with community leaders from across the Pacific community. Those connections are much better than they were even at the beginning. But when we first go into a lockdown, you can see how, if we're trying to get our ministry to out there connecting with community leaders at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, that it can sometimes be a bit difficult. So I think we accept it won't always be perfect. But the connections are getting better every day.
Prime Minister, considering the latest outbreaks, there have been obviously calls to say that maybe South Auckland needs to take precedence in receiving those vaccines with the latest vaccine rollout. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do, because actually, and they are, because our priority is, if we want to protect everyone, the best way to do that is to put in an extra layer of protection at the place COVID might come in. And that's our border. Our border workforce, roughly we're talking about 12,000 people in that first group that we're trying to vaccinate, predominantly are living in South Auckland. So far, roughly 75% of the people we have vaccinated have come from counties Manukau. And that's as it should be. Then our next step is vaccinating their families. So again, I expect to see a high percentage of those vaccinated then coming from counties Manukau as well. And so that's been our first order of priority. Once we protect the border, then we do a much better job of protecting everyone within the community as well.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I know we've overstayed our welcome with your conversation,
No,
but look, lastly, do you have a message that you'd like to share in regards to, our kids, to those who probably maybe experience a loss of jobs, even our mental health and well-being, especially for our Māori Pasifika communities?
Just, I know how hard this is. It's the uncertainty. It really gets people, the financial impact. There is help there. So I just say, please reach out. Even if it's just for our young people who might want to talk, or if anyone's concerned about, the financial, situation, if they may have lost some work, there is support there for everybody, and there is no shame in accessing it, because it is available for everyone. Over 1 million businesses and employees and people have been supported through what we've put out, so there is no shame in it. So please just reach out, MSD, or for anyone who wants to talk, who might be, feeling a bit distressed or uncertain, call 1737. There's someone there for you.
Now, Prime Minister, I'm just going to ask you the last question, because you said it's okay when Aggie said that we overstayed our welcome.
It is okay.
Now, this is to do with a lot of the sound bites that's going around our community. See, because we like to get together, play bingo. Hey, did you hear that the vaccine will give you this and that? And so we're looking at it now. The vaccines that we currently have landed in Aotearoa, we're rolling out, and the border workers are mostly represented by our communities.
Yeah.
Does it include in its content a live virus?
No, that you are not being injected with live COVID-19. It is, without getting into the technicalities of it, the way it works, though, is basically prepares your body to respond if you have an infection. It is safe. So that is my most important message. It is absolutely safe. We've done our own checks. We would not roll out something we did not consider to be safe. You'll be seeing me very publicly being vaccinated, and I'll be encouraging everyone, because it is safe. What is not safe is leaving yourself exposed to COVID-19. It kills people. And unfortunately, we have already seen it is often likely to kill, those who have been members of our Pacifica community. We've seen that, and I just cannot fear the thought of us leaving people exposed. So please, I wouldn't ask you if it wasn't safe. Please be vaccinated.
And we'll be there with the takihi with the rest of the aunties singing along.
They're awesome.
Look, and on that note, we thank you very much for the opportunity. We were actually supposed to start a little convo with you once a month, but it's so good to get an intro so that come next month when we do have these
Absolutely.
catch-up, we're just going to bring the popcorn, talk coffee, and we'll have some other hard-running questions for you. But thank you once again, Prime Minister,
Malo
for this
Peter.
morning.
Yes,
Soy for you.
malo pito.
It is now 20 minutes past 8 o'clock. That is the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of Aotearoa, chilling with us, telling us more about the virus. These are going to be ongoing conversations, so don't worry, you haven't left out anything. And moving forward, we probably should have told you to share us some questions that you wanted to. But look, do